بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم الحمد لله رب العالمين وأفضل الصلاة وأتم التسليم على سيدنا رسول الله وعلى آله وصحبه وسلم أجمعين. It's wonderful being back again this year with you as it is every year. It's a pleasure to be at this amazing women's conference. Today is a topic that we have not actually covered in the past. It's a new topic for you and for me, covering the Sunnah and its application, and the understanding of the Sunnah and the importance of its application and implementation in our lives. Now, just by a show of hands, how many people today here are interested in winning the love of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala? Okay, of course, all of us, right? That's why we're here, right? So actually this very topic of Sunnah and following the Sunnah is actually an indication of how keen you are in striving for the love of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, because Allah Himself in the Quran has directly connected the two, the following of the Sunnah with winning His love. If we look at Surah Al Imran, verse 31, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, بَعْدَ أَعُوذُ بِاللَّهِ مِنَ الشَّيْطَانِ الرَّجِيمِ قُلْ إِن كُنتُمْ تُحِبُّونَ اللَّهَ فَاتَّبِعُونِي يُحْبِبْكُمُ اللَّهُ. That say, if you love Allah, then follow me. This is of course the Messenger ﷺ speaking, and Allah will love you. So we see from the very beginning that the way to win the love of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is through the ittiba, through the following of His Messenger sallallahu alayhi wa sallam. Now of course, it's not possible to follow or live what you don't have knowledge of, what you don't understand. So this is going to be the first prerequisite of actually attaining Allah's love through the Messenger sallallahu alayhi wa sallam, is learning about the Sunnah. It's actually becoming knowledgeable of what that entails, of what the requirements are in terms of following the Sunnah. So the first is a prerequisite for the second. And the desire to be loved by Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, this is going to lead us to a desire for knowledge and a knowledge for the Sunnah. So what it really goes back to is the level of Iman we are at. Depending on our level of Iman will be our level of keenness and desire to try to exercise all the means that we can to win the love of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Now what is the meaning of Sunnah? Sunnah, linguistic, whenever we look at any concept in Islam, we look at it from two perspectives. We look at the linguistic meaning, because this sometimes gives us insights into what it means, and then we look at the Shara'i meaning, yani the meaning of the term, the Sharia, right? So the first linguistic meaning of the word Sunnah, it's from the root word Sanna, and the noun form means a way, a course, a manner of living, or a way that has been instituted or pursued by former people and has become one pursued by those after them. So it refers to any way. Doesn't linguistically, Sunnah is not, it could be good or it can be bad. It doesn't mean one or the other. It simply means a way, a course of action. And the Shara'i meaning of Sunnah is that which comes from the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam in terms of his speech, his actions, or his tacit approvals. That means he may not necessarily have expressed his opinion on an issue, but if he was silent about it, that's interpreted as approval. So the Shara'i definition of Sunnah is that which emanates from the Prophet ﷺ in terms of his speech, his actions, or his tacit approvals. Now, this is the definition of Sunnah from one perspective. From the perspective of the Muhaddithin, yani the scholars of Hadith. Depending on the type of scholar you are, you have a different working definition for Sunnah. Another definition for Sunnah is the one that is used in contrast to Bid'ah. Okay, so one way is to follow the path of the Sunnah, and the other to act in a certain fashion contrary to that Sunnah is termed as Bid'ah. So when we're talking about Sunnah in contrast to Bid'ah, we mean by Sunnah in that context the general guidance of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. And we may come across other working definitions for the Sunnah as well, but this is basically the first one that I gave you, is the one we're going to be focusing on today. Now, the next point that I wanted to make all of you aware of is a view that some groups hold about the Quran. You may have come across this, is that they're beginning to say that the Quran is sufficient for us, right? The Quraniyun and other groups now are implying that we no longer need the Sunnah for the implementation of Islam or to live as a Muslim. The Quran is sufficient for us. Now, what is astonishing to me is how the Prophet ﷺ himself foresaw this coming. How he saw that this was actually going to be something that will be said by the people after him. And the hadith is in Al-Bayhaqi and Abu Dawood, where the Prophet ﷺ said, لا ألفين أحدكم متكئا على أريكته يأتيه أمر مما أمرت به أو نهيت عنه فيقول لا أدري ما وجدنا في كتاب الله اتبعناه. Which means, this is the Prophet ﷺ saying, I had better not find any one of you reclining on his bed, and there comes to him any one of my commandments or one of my prohibitions, and he says about it, I do not know. What we know is the book of Allah, and that do we follow. SubhanAllah, what more clear evidence do you need about the Prophet ﷺ insisting on the importance of following the Sunnah and taking it along with the Quran, that it is not sufficient to rely on the Quran alone, because Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala sent the book with a human messenger to live that book. So you should be able to refute this argument very confidently and clearly when you come across it, inshallah. And you should not waver. This is why I'm giving you the evidence, so you don't have to waver when you're faced with this. You can present the evidence forcefully, inshallah. So now, this begs the question, of course, is it obligatory to follow the Sunnah? Is it fard? Is it at that level of wajib? Sometimes we understand Sunnah to mean something that is extra, something that is mustahab. That is in the context of salah, for example, the nawafil salawat, which are called the sunan murattaba, that come before a fard salah and after it, right? We're not talking about that type of sunnah. And we're going to define it, and it's going to be clearer to you, the difference between the two. In terms of simply obeying the messenger, what does Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala say about that? If you look at the Quran, Surah An-Nisa, verse number 59, بعد أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم يا أيها الذين آمنوا أطيعوا الله وأطيعوا الرسول. O you who believe, obey Allah and obey the messenger. I mean, it's very, very clear evidence, and this of course is in the command form. أطيعوا, this is the command form of the verb to obey. Yani you must obey, it is not a matter of choice. And this of course implies following his way, following his sayings, following all that he commanded, staying away from all that he prohibited. And this in fact, obedience to the Prophet ﷺ is not just obedience to him as a human being, rather it is obedience to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala himself. We also see this in the same surah, An-Nisa, verse number 80, مَن يُطِعِ الرَّسُولَ فَقَدْ أَطَاعَ اللَّهِ, which means that whoever obeys the messenger, in fact he has obeyed Allah himself. So these are this is the type of thinking we have to have very clearly in our minds to understand the role of the Sunnah along with as a counterpart to the Quran. Now Imam Ahmad rahimahullah ta'ala, he's one of the four imams of the fiqh schools of thought, and what does he say about the Quran and these commands about the Sunnah? He says, I read the whole Quran and I found that Allah has ordered us to obey the Prophet 33 times. Yani over and over and over again, subhanAllah, we have almost 3 dozen times that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is ordering the believers to obey the Prophet sallallahu alayhi wa sallam. And if you look at the Prophet himself, what does he say on this topic? On the authority of Abu Hurairah radiallahu anhu, the Prophet sallallahu alayhi wa sallam said, all of my nation will enter Jannah except those who refuse. And they asked, who would possibly refuse to enter Jannah? This was something they were taken aback by and surprised. Who would refuse to enter Jannah? And the Prophet ﷺ explained, whoever obeys me enters Jannah, and whoever disobeys me has refused. So refusing to follow the Sunnah is actually refusing to enter Jannah. That's how close the connection is. That's how direct the connection is. Yani it is only through the Sunnah of the Messenger ﷺ that one can ultimately safely enter into paradise. If we look at the attitude of the Sahaba, let's start with Abu Bakr radiallahu anhu. He used to say, I would never leave anything the Prophet ﷺ used to do. I'm afraid if I leave anything from his Sunnah, I will be misguided. SubhanAllah, this is the fear of Abu Bakr radiallahu anhu. He is the Siddiq, he is the foremost of the Sahaba, the one that has been given the glad tidings of paradise, the closest to the Prophet sallallahu alayhi wa sallam. And he fears for himself misguidance if he were to deviate from the Sunnah. So then what about us? How much more fearful should we be of becoming misguided, of deviating, if we leave any of the Sunnah of the Prophet sallallahu alayhi wa sallam? And we saw how Abu Bakr radiallahu anhu in his lifetime proved his adherence to these words when he said that he would never leave anything of the Sunnah. Look at what he did when he became Khalifa and a group of the Muslims began to refuse to pay the zakat. What did he do? He actually fought them. He said that I will fight the one who distinguishes between the salah and the zakat. They used to say, we'll pray the salah, we're not going to give the zakat. And so he actually proved and lived his words. Now, what are the implications of not following the Sunnah? the people who actually make this claim, or if we ourselves are lacking in our implementation of our living of the Sunnah, what does this imply to me as a Muslim? What am I really saying to myself? What are the Muslims saying to themselves when they are lax in following the Sunnah? Number one is either it is no longer relevant, because if something applies to you, is relevant to you, you would be implementing it, right? So when we fail to actually implement the Sunnah in our lives, the implication is that of irrelevance. This directly contradicts our Iman in Islam itself, because our Iman is that Islam is universal and it's good for all times. It is relevant and applicable for all times. If that is the case, then it follows logically that the Sunnah also then is relevant for all times, and its application will never cease to exist. Now, another point, when we don't follow Sunnah, I want you to actively think along with me now. What are we implying? What are we saying when we actually become lax in our application of the Sunnah? The second thing that I'm saying to myself, or you're saying to yourself, is isn't it true that when people believe in the fact that someone really possesses true wisdom, if someone claims in a credible manner that they have the keys to happiness, don't you see throngs of people flocking to these workshops and these seminars, self-help sessions where they're actually going to be given, the keys to happiness, or how to live, a contented life? We see throngs of people, multitudes. This is the whole industry where people actually publish books and hold seminars, which are very expensive, but people go to and attend. But what about when someone we believe is a messenger of Allah, and he in fact has the keys to true eternal happiness, and he in fact is the one who can really show you the way to paradise? What is our attitude going to be if we really believe this? Shouldn't we be flocking to him eagerly, trying to find out what is the method of eternal bliss? It's only a logical conclusion that you would have to then express that eagerness. If the belief is sincere, if the belief is deep and sincere and real, then there will be this overt expression of flocking to the Messenger ﷺ and his Sunnah, and desirously implementing that. And if it's not like that, then it's just information. We just know that he's a prophet of God, but that belief is not really meshing with our hearts. It's just something we know on paper. We can reiterate it with our tongues, but it's not really translating into action. Now, another problem with not following the Sunnah, and of course there are multiple problems, we can't discuss all of them here, but one of the obvious problems of not following the Sunnah is if we fail in this duty of ours, how do we know that our acts are acceptable and pleasing to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala? Realize, sisters, there's no way for us to assuredly know, to rest assured, to be certain that our actions are acceptable and pleasing to Allah, except to the Sunnah of the Messenger sallallahu alaihi wasallam. If someone is feeling particularly pious one day, and they say, okay, I feel so close to Allah that rak'atayn, 2 rak'ahs of Fajr will just not do, I have to pray for it. Is that action accepted by Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala? In fact, it is rejected. Why? Even though the intention is sincere, and intention is a necessary component for the acceptability of any act, but the second critical component of the acceptability of the act is missing. And what is that? That is the Sunnah of the Messenger sallallahu alaihi wasallam.